Hi, and welcome to our first in our videos for our computer hardware class. Chapter 1 is an overview of everything and all the chapters to follow. Chapter 1 is testable material, and anything that I go over in these series of Chapter 1 videos should be taken down as notes. If you see something bold and underlined, it especially should be taken down as notes. And if you have any questions at any time, you can stop and email me if we're not in class this time, or raise your hand if we are, to clarify any points that are on there. Also, we have our class forums to ask questions as well as the online chat. So, what is a computer system? That's our first question. What does it build up of? What are the things that we need to make a computer work? Now, in all aspects of this course, we're talking about desktop computer systems. Obviously, the laptop that I have in front of me has all those things integrated in together. They all exist in the same way in this laptop as it does in a desktop system, but this class is really talking about desktops more than laptops. So what are the things we have to set up a computer? And really, we only need 4 basic things to hook up a computer and a couple things connected to it, right? We need to have a PC, or that box that holds all the computing equipment inside it. And so sometimes that's a tower, sometimes it's called a desktop, sometimes it's called a mini, doesn't matter. You need the basic PC. In order for us to use it, we need to have a monitor. There are computers without monitors, but they're not ones that we can view things on, right? And we have to have a keyboard and mouse. Those are the 4 basic components. Now, we also have to have the cords that plug them together, obviously, and we need to have electrical power to power them. But if we were to go to set up a computer somewhere, those are the things that we would need. We need the tower, we need a monitor, we need a keyboard and a mouse, and we, provided we have the cords that connect them all together and plug them into the wall, have a computer. Those are what we call the basic components of a computer. And if I was to send you out to somewhere in a classroom to hook up a computer, you want to make sure you have the PC, monitor, keyboard, mouse, the cable that goes between the monitor and the PC, and a power cable for the PC and a power cable for the monitor. Anything else is what we would consider optional components for a computer system. And there are lots of optional components that we'll talk about throughout this course, but those are the basic components that were needed. When we talk about those things, and in this class, we talk about hardware, and then for one brief moment in the class, we talk about software. Hardware are those physical things like these components that we just mentioned that we're going to touch and move. That's the hardware. If you can't touch it, it's not hardware. This course is mainly about hardware. In fact, every chapter except for one is about hardware. Software is that set of instructions that tells the computer what to do and how to use that hardware. And the only chapter that we talk about software, and we'll do it for a little while, is chapter 2. Software is what hardware uses to do those things, like record this video, make this green screen happen behind me, have the video in front of me, have the audio record. All those things are done through hardware by software. Software is the programs that cause things to happen on the hardware, which is the physical stuff. So again, this course is mainly about hardware, but we do spend some time on software because it does become an issue on certain things. We need to make sure we know how to use that as well. Oh, on the wrong screen again. There we go. So, hardware needs software to work, though. If I just have this laptop and there's no software on it, it does nothing for me. I have to have that as well to make it work. So, hardware is what we use and interact with. Software is what happens inside of it to make those things happen. And all those are stored in binary. So that's why it matters if we have more bytes of storage, because if everything's happening in those bytes, then the more we have, the better our system can be. To a point, we'll talk about those points later on. So in this illustration, it shows a user typing something in. The keyboard converts that to binary codes, to bits, and sends it through the cable to the computer the computer does the processing with whatever Lisa's done, which is to print out something. It turns it into binary and sends it through a cable to the printer, and then the printer converts the binary code back to characters to create a printout. So, in terms of a computer, we have primary input and output devices, and our primary input devices are the keyboard and mouse. And I probably said in my introduction to the class, or some things I'm going to say are foot stompers. You're definitely going to see them on your test. I'm going to call those knuckle rappers too. You need to know that the two primary input devices are a keyboard and a mouse. That's the primary way humans, us, get data into our computer. And yes, there are other input devices. This camera is in fact an input device. The microphone is an input device, right? We can say, hey Siri, do this. It's because the microphone's an input device. But the primary ones are the keyboard and the mouse. All processing takes place inside the computer. We're going to talk about those parts in a minute. And our primary output, two primary outputs, are a monitor and a printer. And I apologize for how old that picture looks, because I would have a hard time finding a CRT anymore, right? And that's what a big monitor used to be called, as opposed to an LED flat screen that we have now. So inputs, keyboard and mouse, output, monitor, and printer. And yes, there are other outputs too, just like your speakers are an output from your computer to give you audio of things. But those are the two primary inputs and output devices. So all communication goes through wires or cables. Most popular, like I just said, are in keyboard and mouse for input, and monitor and printer for your output devices. We have to think about how do these things connect too, because really for them to work, now in the case of the keyboard, it's integrated, right? But most things anymore connect through USB. Not all things, many things, I should say, connect through USB. And this is an example of a USB keyboard and mouse. Hopefully everyone knows what USB looks like. If you don't, we'll go over it in chapter 4 and what those connectors look like on a computer. Output are monitors and printers. Most printers today are either a USB or wireless, which is a connection, even though it's not physical, it's going through the air, right? Or are network, which are also physical, going through a network cable. Monitors all have some kind of wire that connect up to them, and there are different kinds of monitors, but they have to be physically connected to our computer as well. How they connect is a large or a decent part of chapter 4 when we talk about motherboards, because all those connections are on the back of a PC. Some of them are in the front, but the ones in the front are really connected on the inside and run through a cable to the front. They're not really in the front. You're just kind of on a little mini extension cable. Everything that's part of the PC has to connect to it somehow. Most of the time, those are through wires. Sometimes it's through wireless. So most of the connections are in the back of the PC here on this back panel right here that you see me circling with my mouse. Can you see that? Yeah, I guess you can see that. And some of them would be down here on expansion slots, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. But everything has to plug in there. Everything is connected to the main system somehow, or it's not part of it at all. It's just a piece of hardware sitting beside it. So what is inside the case? And so that's what we're going to talk about now, is what the chapters are about and what's inside of a computer case. Because really, while we hook up monitors, we hook up mice, and we hook up keyboards, that's not what the class is about. That's not a computer at all. We're talking about this main part here, what's inside the case and what's in there. So we've got this broken down into chapters. Chapter 1 is the introduction, chapter 2 is software, and then we start talking about parts. Chapter 3 is all about power, how electricity works, how it's converted inside a PC, and how we power the internal components of a PC. And we talk about power supplies in that chapter. Chapter 4 is a big chapter, and honestly, we'll be done with all of chapter 4 if everything works out well at the semester exam time. We'll finish it up, have the last test on chapter 4 at the semester exam at the end of the semester, and then move on with the rest of the chapters after that. I broke chapter 4 up into chapter 4A and chapter 4B. These are the two most important parts of our computer, and 4A is about the motherboard, and Chapter 4B is about the CPU, or the brains of the computer. Then we'll talk about primary storage on a computer, which is what RAM and system memory is. Then we'll talk about secondary storage, or hard drives, and then expansion cards, specifically emphasizing video cards because that's the main thing that people expand their computer with. Chapter 15 is everything brought together with you guys buying your own PC and presenting it to the class on those things that you put in your PC. And Chapter 16 is really an intro to the advanced tech on how to repair PCs, although it's very important that you guys learn how to fix your own PCs as well and how you diagnose and do that. So that's what the class looks like going forward and how it's broken up chapter by chapter.